Hello and welcome back to this bonus episode of the knitlicorice podcast. I'm Michaela and today is quite a grey and dull day in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm planning to just share with you today some of my plans moving into spring, some knitting plans that is, and some different yarns and patterns that I want to explore for some of my upcoming trips, or my two upcoming trips that I know of, which is one to London and to Italy. And I'll tell you a bit more about that as I get going today. But first and foremost, I finished my Móinéar sweater, and this is actually the first pattern that I want to discuss today, because I knit this to bring with me to London. We are going in February the 26th to London, and for that I had two pieces that I wanted to knit, and this is one of them. I mentioned this in my first podcast episode, and this is the Móinéar sweater by Ailbíona McLochlainn, I think you'd say. And since I share a bit more about the pattern in that video, I won't be going over it too much in this video, but it's an Aran weight pattern. It's at a gauge of 17 stitches per 10 centimeters. It has 8 sizes, which range between 86 and 160 centimeters of the garment circumference around the bust, that is. And yeah, I finished it last night. And then with 2 enormous bath sheets and a hand towel, I was able to get a lot of moisture out of it. So it's dry now. I think it has like a tiny, on the back perhaps, where it's been laying. But let me try and show you a bit what this looks like standing up. So yeah, this is my Móinéar sweater. And oh, that's nice. Wow. Yeah, I think this is a beautiful sweater, and I believe the motif is inspired by a meadow, flowers on a meadow and rain hitting the flowers. And yeah, I think it looks like that. And I knit mine in a yarn from Denmark, from Sjalett ullspinneri, called gräsgarn, which I believe is a yarn that they make from their own sheep, and it's quite a rustic yarn. But I did, while blocking, when I was rinsing out the wool detergent, I added like a coin size amount of my conditioner into the bath water, and I think that softened it up a bit at least, and now it's just super fluffy. Can you tell? It feels very nice. And I did do 2 modifications, I think. So the first one was, it was in the body actually. I switched the ribbing at the bottom to a half twisted rib, and the pattern calls for something else. I won't share too much about that, but it's a half twisted rib. And then I did a tubular bind off, so 2 rows of double knitting, and then an Italian cast off bind off. And I got help from a tutorial. I'll show them here because I don't have the name in my head right now, but truly it was so helpful, and I think that anyone can do it. I really love this a lot, and I think it will be very warm. I'm already warming up, but I think it will be nice, in London in February. I imagine it's not necessarily that warm. I had another modification that I did, and they have you knit the 2 color ribbing all the way to the top and then bind off, and I just did an extra row of my base color, and then I did the bind off in pattern just using the base color. So it's basically that my edge just is one color. So it's not a very difficult modification, but if you want to achieve this look, that's how you do it. Yeah, I think that was everything I wanted to say. Obviously, I'm so happy to be finished with it, and it was such a joy to knit this, and I could absolutely see myself knitting another one in the future. But the second thing that I want to knit is, and it was so funny because High Fiber Knits mentioned this pattern in I think her Yarn Pantry roundup, and I'd been thinking about this for a month. And then she mentioned it, and I thought it was funny. But it's the Montpellier Slipover by November Knits. And it's a 16 gauge, stitch gauge pattern using worsted weight yarn. It's 8 different sizes, and it ranges from 110 to 167 centimeters of garment finished circumference. And it's knit up on 5mm needles. I didn't say, but I knit this base color portion on 4.5mm needles. And this is 5mm needles at a 16 stitch gauge. But I was thinking of knitting this. I'm planning to knit mine in Nutiden. And this I bought last spring, I think. Yeah, last spring. It's the colorway Önska, and it's, I believe, the birthday color of 2023, but it's this lovely, if I remember correctly, I think they described it as, you know, watercolor paint in different shades, yeah, but it has kind of a purpley base with some other colors through it. And I'm planning to knit mine in this, and I'll have 2 weeks to start and finish this, and I'm planning on making a video following me on that journey. I wouldn't normally knit with such a tight deadline. I want to, if I'm able to, I want to be able to bring this with me to London. So that's the only reason. I don't want anyone to feel pressured to make something in such a short time frame. You really shouldn't have to, unless you are perhaps going somewhere and you have a very definite deadline. I wouldn't normally do that, so just bear that in mind. But so yeah, that's what I'm planning on taking with me. I was originally gonna make a Robinia using this shade and a white called S. Albus from last spring as well. But I think I want to make that in a perhaps a bit more fun color combination. But more on that perhaps in this following year. And moving on from my winter knits into when we get back, so in March, moving into Easter, because Easter falls early this year. It's like the last few days of March, and for that I would love to, if I'm able to and find time, I would love to make something that's very colourful. And I do have some ideas for which yarns to use, but I think I will only have time to make one sweater. I'm not going to pressure myself to try and make anything more than that, but I have some ideas. This is the colorway Håg, and it's this really golden green shade, I want to say. Yeah, can you imagine a sweater in this color? Either using this Håg or from the same collection, this turquoise greeny blue shade called Byttan. So either this or this. And what I would make with that, and I've already purchased the pattern, so it's only a matter of time, really, before I make that one. I'm planning to make the Donna Jenna by Joanna Ang. the same person who designed the Helia pullover that I mentioned in my first pullover, my first podcast. So yeah, this will either this one or this one. If you have any thoughts, I would love to know about it in the comments. But as of yet, I am not decided. I saw a version of the Donna Jenna pullover on Instagram using byttan, but I was leaning towards white, perhaps. They are both lovely colors and they feel really nice and squishy. The original sample was also knit in Nutiden, and it's a 14 stitch gauge, so it's very open and airy. I think she recommends a 6 or 7 millimeter needle gauge, 6 millimeter needles. So although it being quite complex in the yoke, I think it will be quite a quick knit if I don't run into any problems like I did with my Kume sweater, which is also knit in Nutiden, but that's currently in my naughty bin corner. But yeah, so, and another alternative that I have, or actually two, but it depends on where I want to go with it. So I mentioned in my first podcast episode that I had purchased some BC Garn McLochlainn, and they say that you can use 4 to 5 millimeter needles to knit this up. And what I mentioned then, and I'll mention briefly again, is that this is for 50 grams, 150 meters. So that's closer to a sport weight yarn, but they have a stitch gauge of 18 mentioned on the label. This is the colorway 21, and yeah, it's just 100% wool. Oh, sorry, that's not focusing at all. There you go. So what I did to try and figure out my gauge, because I was thinking maybe it's closer to a 20 stitch gauge, depending on what needles you use. And indeed, I tried using a 4 millimeter needle and ended up with pretty spot on, even though it's just a tiny sample, 20 stitches per 10 centimeters. But I also managed on 5 millimeter needles to end up with a pretty spot on 18 stitch gauge. And yeah, so it really only depends on where I want to go with this. Do I want to go with the 20 stitch gauge or the 18 stitch gauge? The only difference being that this is a bit airier and you perhaps, but I don't think it's very see-through either. It bloomed quite nicely with blocking. These been blocked as well. And yeah, so it depends. If I go with this one, the 18 stitch gauge, I was planning on making a Helia pullover, which I also mentioned in my first episode, I believe. And it's also by Joanna Ang, a pattern by Joanna Ang. And if I choose to go with this, the 20 stitch gauge, which is just a bit more compact, a bit more dense, but still they are both very soft, which I like. And if I do this, which is closer to DK weight, I was planning on doing the Seaway pullover by Ozetta, which is a 20 stitch in pattern gauge. So I'm not sure which direction I would take it in. It's either or. I only have one sweat quantity's worth, and I just have to think. But it's a while still until we're in March. So after March and after Easter, by which I would like to have a colourful project or thing to wear for Easter, we are moving into to April and May. And at the beginning of June, so that's the whole planning need, where my planning need comes from. It's our trip to Italy. We're going to a wedding in Venice, and after that we are heading to the Dolomites. I believe it's a mountain range in the Alps, I think. It's also in Italy anyway. But for that trip, I would like to have something summery with summer fibers, because at least in Venice it will be quite warm at the beginning of June. And as of now, I don't have like a knit piece that I think would fit the bill quite. So I have some different projects in mind for that as well. But so yeah, moving into spring and April, May, working towards the June trip to Italy. The first pattern that I was thinking of doing, and which I've already purchased, so it's again only a matter of time before I make this, but is the Misurina top by Caitlin Hunter. And this is a colorwork sweater made in, I think hers is made in fingering weight yarn, but it's knit at a DK stitch gauge at 20 stitches for 10 centimeters in the colorwork and body pattern. And I was thinking of doing that in 2 strands of Sun Is Gone tin linen. And the colors I have 2 colors, and I would need to buy like 2 additional skeins in a contrast color in order to make this. But either this color, perhaps only need one, which is a really light greeny blue grey shade. I don't know that they make this anymore. I bought this at a clearance. It's colorway 7521, and again tin liner. I have knit a swatch of this at the 20 stitch gauge, but it was a while ago. But what strikes me about it is how silvery it looks. I'm hoping that the camera picks that up, but it looks so beautiful. And I was thinking that if I would use this yarn, I would probably buy just the white tin linen color, or I have tin linen in this burnt sand colorway, which is closer to the Misurina. And if I did use this colorway, I would buy like a charcoal grey as a contrast color, the same as in Caitlin Hunter's sample of this sample photos. This is the colorway 2734, and I bought this on clearance as well, so I don't know if this is available either. Sorry, but they do have a huge color range for the tin linen, if I'm not mistaken. So I think you should be able to find something at least similar to these. I want to make also a Soho top. And this is a pattern by Caidree. It's using, she calls it a worsted weight yarn, but it's knit more closer to a DK gauge in 20 stitches for 10 centimeters, given that it's in garter stitch. But when you knit it horizontal like that, I believe the gauge is quite close to stockinette stitch either way. So if it's 20 in garter, it's usually 20 in stockinette, I found at least. And it has 10 sizes available. Bust circumference of finished garment ranging from 76 to 136 centimeters. I already have the yarn for that as well. And it's this, also Sun Is Gone, but the cotton yarn, Mandarine Naturel, in this like slightly warm grey, dark chocolate desaturated kind of a shade. This might also be discontinued. I bought a lot of plant-based yarns last spring at a clearance at an online yarn store that I frequent a bit, but it's in a Swedish store, so at least the shipping is within Sweden. And yeah, so a lot of my plant-based fibers I don't think are available, the shades that I have at least. This is the colorway 3870, and it's just a cotton yarn, DK, weight 50 grams is 130 meters, which I think would quite easily give me a 20 stitch gauge. And I think it would be nice for this. It's worked flat and in the round, so at least for the top portion, the garter stitch would be easy to make, because then you would just make, yeah, every row is knit row, basically. But then I'm assuming you would have to switch over so that every other row is on the wrong side, or like the wrong side stitches. do you call it, pearl stitches, a pullover. But I would love to have one of those as well, and I think this would be a really nice, more of a neutral colorway to have a summer top in. So I'm excited for that as well. Oh, and also I should mention, if I have some yarn left over in this shade, I'm planning on making a Penelope kerchief. High Five Knits has mentioned this as well, but it's a free pattern. I believe it's written by a Swede, Linnea Nyman, and I'll link it below. All of these patterns will be linked below. They always are, or at least unless I miss something. But it's this kerchief with, it has like a panel of lace going through the middle, and it ties around your head, and I think that would be nice to protect my scalp from the sun. So if I find the time, I would love to make one of those as well. And yeah, and some other patterns that I just wanted to mention for the rest of the year, which I do have in mind, but don't know when I will have the time to knit, is a pattern first by Sari Nordlund from her book Softly, Timeless Knits. And I got this for my birthday, I think. But it's called the Apollonis Pullover. I'm going to try to show you an image. It's this sweater, and it's just a basic round yoke sweater with quite a big gauge of 14 stitches, and they already have the yarn that I'm planning to use for this, and it's this, yeah, and I should say also the sizes. They range from sizes 1 to 9, and the finished bust circumference ranges from 87 to 167 centimeters. The yarn they use is a bulky weight yarn, and I was planning on using this. It's the brushed alpaca, and it's in this tweed colorway. I believe it was new or released like at the early autumn, maybe late autumn. Anyway, the color is 2523, and yeah, it's just I believe it's 50 grams, it's 110 meters. They recommend an 18 to 12 stitch gauge and needles 4 to 7 millimeters. And I think it would be a nice match. And I did knit a swatch in this yarn, which just so reminds me of like when the snow starts melting in Stockholm and Sweden, and you have lots of gravel and bits of debris left mixed in with the snow. That's what this reminds me of. I love it. And this is actually another stitch pattern, because I was thinking of making I believe it's the Acosta, if I'm not mistaken. I'll put some info here, but now I'm thinking of making just the Apollonia, what's it called? Apollonis, again by Sari Nordlund. So that's something that I'm looking forward to if I get the chance to. It's super soft, and the result is it's quite airy but really fluffy, and I'm looking forward to making that at some point. And then I also have a pair of socks. It's called the Titbirds socks, and it's a pattern by Natalia, Moreva, or Collabra Designs. And it's these socks, and I already have the yarn for it because I was gifted it by my grandmother. It's this trekking sock yarn by Sorry, the video cut out a bit. I'm hoping the angles are still pretty much the same. But what I was telling you about was the trekking sock yarn by Kofta. It's this sock yarn like collection, I guess you'd say, with some, I believe, hand-dyed colorways that are basically for this sock pattern, and I'm looking very much forward to making this. I'm a bit scared because I think based on how the chart is laid out in the pattern, which I guess I can show you a bit first. This is a chart collection with different alternatives for different sizes. But it's, as you can see, very many colors, and I think based on the chart that it's worked toe up. So that's why I made the thinner slippers. So I at least tried before going ahead with these light fingering weight, super many color work socks. Basically, I wanted a bit of practice before doing that, but I'm very much looking forward to those. And since they are a small project but still wool, a woolly fiber or superwash, I thought they would be nice to work on during the summer, so that I would have kind of a woolly fiber but not a huge project, and yeah, be able to work on them perhaps outside. Moving on is something I'm looking forward to as well, and I do already have the pattern for this one as well that I'm about to mention, but it's a range of patterns by Caitlin Hunter, and it's her halibut range, which are just these super fun and, to me at least, like light-hearted color work patterns, because they have these huge fish motifs, which I find super charming, and I would very much like to make a halibut cowl. And it's a pattern that is worked up, color work pattern worked up in a DK weight yarn at a 20 stitch gauge, and I believe it would be a great, you know, smaller project, but that would still be quite fun and engaging, and with some fun colors I think it would be a great knit, really. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And also by Caitlin Hunter is this colorwork sweater called Talvinen. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but perhaps I'm close, or hopefully I'm close. And it's this sweater pullover, colorwork sweater pullover, and she's made it in a fingering weight yarn, I think, based on the Ravelry page, but it's at a 24 stitch gauge for 10 centimeters, which makes me think that I could probably knit this up in a sport weight yarn. And the first time I saw this sweater actually, and the thing that inspired me to get this pattern as well, during Caitlin Hunter's birthday sale this fall, I believe it was, because it was a big sale, and I purchased like 4 different patterns: the Talvinen, the halibut cowl, the Misurina top as well during that time. But I saw it on Every Stitch Counts podcast, where she made this sweater in these beautiful colors that really inspired me, and it was actually what made me click on her video and start watching her. So if you're interested in that as well, check her out, see what she's doing, what she's up to, for sure. But if I'm not mistaken, she made it in Rama Finull, which is the same yarn that I made my Paloma sweater that I'm wearing in my first podcast episode. And I think it would probably work well, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'll find some yarn in London for it. I'm not gonna decide yet, since it's just on my mind, this pattern basically. But I'm looking forward to it. The last thing that I mentioned was because at the same time that I bought all of those plant fibers at a sale, from the same store I bought this yarn. And I don't think that you can get this anymore. It's not only the colorway that's discontinued, it's this range of yarn. It's also from Sunde, and it's called Tretråds tyck ull, which would translate to 3-thread thick wool. It's a bulky weight yarn, I think, and they recommend a 16 stitch gauge on 5mm needles. This is the colorway 2114, and it's like this bright banana kind of yellow. And I was planning on knitting either the Sunshine Impressions cardigan by Drops Design, a free pattern, which is knit at a 14 stitch gauge using bulky weight yarn. But I like it because I think a cardigan with a bulky weight yarn, which is also has these open bits of lace, would be really nice to have. And yeah, would be a nice perhaps first cardigan pattern to use. It has these saddle shoulders as well, which a construction type that I've never knit before. So that might be fun, or the Spastico warm-up sweater. I have not decided. Either or would be perfectly fine. I think the warm-up sweater is a kind of a classic style raglan sweater, top down, knitted top down, and would also be really nice to have, I think. But guys, that was everything that I was planning on talking about today. So it's my remaining bits of winter plans, my spring plans, moving into early summer, and some other pattern thoughts and yarn ideas. And also closing out this episode, or this bonus episode, I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's watched my first 2 episodes. The response has been truly amazing to me, and I've loved reading all your comments and responding, and you are so sweet, and it's so appreciated that you take the time to write these comments so that I can read them. And yeah, it's been such a great start, really, and yeah, I felt truly welcome. And also thank you to all my today 230 subscribers. I can't believe that you're already so many, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. I have lots of plans heading into the future, but again, I work full time, so the videos will kind of be when I have the time, right? And I'm sure you understand that. And yeah, thank you so much for today. I hope you have a great day or weekend or evening or whenever it is that you are watching this video, and I hope to catch up with you. It will probably be after my London trip, and then you will also know if I managed to make the Montpellier Slipover in 2 weeks. Keep your eyes out for that video, because that will probably be the next video, perhaps accompanied by a yarn haul if I do purchase some yarns in London. But without further ado, bye!